Hello everybody and welcome to another book review. Today I'm going to be reviewing My Best Friend's Exorcism by a man with a really difficult name, Grady Hendrix. For some reason I can never remember his name. Now, when you look at the cover, it looks like an old-time VHS tape box, and it even says "Be kind, rewind." And it is throwback whenever day to the 80s. It's set in the 80s, and most of the action takes place in 1988. And it is a horror novel. It deals with exorcism. It deals with demonic possession. So for those of you who have seen or read The Exorcist, either the film or the novella, I guess, by Peter Blatty, it is a little bit reminiscent of that storyline, but a lot more, with a lot of a bigger kicker in it. It's the story mainly of Abby. She's the POV character, and it's told in the third person. And she and three other girls are the main characters, but only she has a POV. They live in Charleston, and three of the girls are really rich: Gretchen, Glee, and Margaret. And Abby used to be from a kind of well-to-do family, not rich, but academically really well-versed, which is why she got a scholarship to the school that all of them go to. But her parents fell on hard times, and her father got laid off twice, and he ends up in a really bad situation where he's basically just spending his time fixing lawnmowers, which he doesn't really fix, but basically his backyard fills up with broken lawnmowers. But Abby, being a really good student, straight A student, PSAT of above 1500, apparently that's really good, I don't know the system, can stay in school. And one day, and I mean I'm skipping the first part because that tells how Abby and Gretchen got to meet, because this story is really about the friendship between the two and about demonic possession. At some point when they're about 16, Gretchen, Glee, Margaret, and Abby decide to do acid once. But for some reason it doesn't really work. They have no effects whatsoever, and so they decide to go for a midnight swim. And Gretchen goes for a midnight swim ahead of everybody else, and she gets lost in the woods. And the others try to find her, and it takes them all night until they finally find her. And then things start to go downhill pretty quickly. Gretchen starts to change, first physically, so probably a real teenage thing. Her face and her skin becomes really, acne worn. Her teeth start to decay, and she is beginning to really go to seed, as it were. And it's not quite clear if it's because she's stopped washing or if it's because of something else going on. And she also becomes moody, and she's kind of withdrawing from everybody, but she's also becoming really mean. And Abby is kind of trying to come to terms with this, try to help her, try to find out what's going on. And at some point she gets it in her head that on that night when they went for a midnight swim and Gretchen got lost in the woods, someone raped her. And so she tries to tell Gretchen's parents, your daughter has been raped. She has an idea of who it was. Although this guy is completely innocent, he has nothing to do with anything. And in addition to being mean, Gretchen is also beginning to change one more time. Because from one day to the next, she suddenly is beautiful, radiant, good looking, a very different person It's still Gretchen from the outside, but she now looks like a shining beauty, um, and manages to become close friends with Margaret in Glee and isolating Abby. It's all told in the story, and I don't want to go into any details because the way she does it is demonic and really well designed and really well crafted. And then things start to go even further downhill because not only is Abby now isolated, but Gretchen implicates the school vicar and Glee in a kind of love situation, which of course he's a Catholic priest, so that's not happening. And also she's a minor, he's a teacher, and it's all kinds of terrible. And she tries to make Glee commit suicide by jumping off the school tower, but fortunately it doesn't happen. And somebody snatches her back at the very last moment. She feeds slimming foods to Margaret, who seems to have a weight problem. Well, according to what was a good idea in the 80s. I mean, where everybody who didn't look like a late Twiggy was supposed to be, or was said to be fat. So I don't really know what her size was, but I never got the feeling, as she's described in the book, that she has any reason to look after her weight, you know, even for medical reasons. But she's feeding her slimming foods, and over time Margaret starts to waste away. And Abby one day, after Margaret has been withdrawn to school, smuggles herself into Margaret's house, and she finds Margaret looking emaciated and almost like a skeleton with skin over her face and over her body. And it turns out that Gretchen has been feeding her tapeworm eggs, which apparently back then, and I verified this with my mum, you could buy. It was kind of not forbidden. It was frowned upon. It's dangerous, and don't try this at home, but it was one way of trying to control one's weight. But instead of taking just one dose, she fed her multiple doses over the course of several weeks. And in the end, it turns out that Margaret is ridden with those parasites. They managed to save her at the last minute. Really, like she's almost dead at this stage. But things are getting worse. And at some point, Abby uses the phone to call someone that she believes is Gretchen's friend from summer camp, but ends up speaking to Gretchen. And then she realizes that this whole idea of Gretchen changing is not something that Gretchen is doing, but that this is some kind of supernatural entity. There is also a group of holy wrestlers, I don't know what else to call them, the Lemon Brothers, who are basically weightlifters and bodybuilders, but who come with a mission from the Lord, basically. And one of them tells Abby that her friend has a demon hanging about her, and that they actually specialize in doing demonic exorcisms. And basically she contacts him. He says, okay, he's going to help her. They end up doing an exorcism, which goes terribly wrong. And the Lemon Brother actually runs from the room, and Abby, who has been baptized but is a non-believer, is left with a still possessed Gretchen tied to a bed, with, you know, like just waiting for the police to arrive, because the parents, of course, want their daughter back, and they're going to raise heaven and hell to find her. But she manages to pull off the exorcism herself in a really interesting manner, which I really thought was really well crafted, and succeeds. But of course, you know, it doesn't end there. Abby is supposed to go to jail because lots of things have happened in the meantime. The demon has been wreaking havoc. The demon has also laid open his plans to Abby of what he's going to do and what he's trying to do and what he will be doing. So there will be a school shooting and stuff, because she is just so persuasive. Gretchen has managed to destroy the whole school community one by one. And she's not finished yet. And Abby can see this clearly. If she doesn't get rid of this demon, the demon will start infecting everyone, and they won't stop in Charleston. Gretchen will move someplace else. The demon will be with her. The demon will start killing people and destroying lives there as well. So Abby is ready to go to jail, but then in this case, Brother Lemon comes to the rescue, and this time really, and he takes the blame for everything. He says that he abducted Gretchen, that he tried to perform an exorcism, that he's kind of Lula, blah, blah, blah. And Gretchen's off the hook, so she gets not even sent to detention or anything, but her parents move to New Jersey. But then the next problem is that nobody wants to testify against Brother Lemon. So Brother Lemon spends 8 months in custody and then basically is released as well. And the parents try to keep the two girls apart. So basically they're not allowed to ring each other. They're not allowed to exchange letters. But at some point, Gretchen gets in the car, drives up from Charleston to New Jersey. The two are reunited. The parents understand that the two of them should not be kept apart. And then the next decades are actually handled in, I want to say, a couple of pages, 10 pages maybe, up until the present day, when and lots of things happen. So basically Abby marries, she's divorced, she has a child. After the divorce, Gretchen moves in with her for several months to help her, you know. Parents die, things happen, people go to university, people come back from university, people graduate, people have jobs, and so on and so forth. And during this time, they still have contact, not maybe probably not as close. And it's actually said that sometimes, you know, all of those little things, all of those little but still important things, they don't share with each other anymore, simply because they are so far apart, even like physically speaking. And I won't give away the ending, but the last 1.5 pages had me in tears. And it is definitely a book about demonic possession. So this is not a metaphor for anything. It's not a metaphor for coming of age or whatever. This is a book with a horror theme. And what this demon does, I mean, destroying lives. The dog gets killed, just to warn you. Murdered by Gretchen, for example, when she's possessed by the demon. So this is not a fun book, and it's also not, although it may look like it, it's not for children. It's not a children's book or young adult. I think this is an adult book. But it is also about the friendship between these two and how even time cannot destroy it. And the last 1.5 pages had me in tears. I can really recommend it. And why did I compare it to The Exorcist? Because The Exorcist is probably the book or the film that most people think about when they hear demonic possession and what comes after. And I've read the book, I've listened to the audiobook, and I've watched the movie. The movie itself is terrifying. I will never watch it again. The book is okay. It's not a bad book, but it's also not a book that I would read again, because it's not really that, you know, it's not a great book. And why is it not a great book? Because it lacks the stakes, in my opinion, because you've got the girl that's possessed and you've got the priest that's trying to cure that possession, but it's all contained. The girl is in the house, unlike in The Omen, where Damien is trying to take over the world, where he ends up close to the president of the United States, you know, that kind of thing. It's all contained in the one house. So it's really this one demon, Pazuzu, fighting this man of God. And that in and of itself isn't an uninteresting dynamic, but the stakes are kind of, okay, so what then? You know, what happens if we kill the girl? If we just really want to stop the demon, could we just kill the girl? The reason why this book is so much more powerful, in my opinion, is because you see what happens when the demon goes out into the community and starts destroying lives, and not just the life of this one girl and her mother, and possibly the priest, but really, really throwing out its demonic web and catching everyone in it. And also the stakes for Abby, because not only is Abby losing her friend and she's trying to prevent this from happening, and this is something that probably all of us have experienced at one point or another in our lives, where there may have been somebody that we really like, but they're withdrawing, or, you know, things happen and a friendship ends, but we are trying to hold on to it. And that happens even without people being possessed by demons. But it's also because Abby is being isolated and made and victimized by the demon and turned into the perpetrator, because the demon is blaming Abby, and successfully so, for the things that are happening in the community and deflecting everything from Gretchen, you know. So for Abby, the stakes move from I want to save my best friend to even a point where she says she's not my friend anymore. You know, she's really moved away emotionally from this attachment to Gretchen to, oh my Lord, I'm fighting for my own life here. I may end up in jail, or worse, I may end up in a lunatic asylum. You know, these are all things that are on the table for her, and she's trying to then fight her way out of those, and then circling back to I'm fighting for my friend and our friendship. And so I was a lot more involved in this book and in the characters, and really wanted to, you know, to see how this was going to evolve. Whereas The Exorcist really left me cold. You know, it's like, okay, it's a monster, it's a demonic possession. Okay, there's a priest. Let's see what happens. Oh, the old priest dies, the young priest manages. Okay, well, you know, it's a horror story. This is also a horror story, don't get me wrong. And it's a lot more horrific, but it's also a lot more personal. So I would recommend this book if you don't mind reading graphic horror, because some of these things are quite graphic. There's also kind of like probably trigger warnings around alcohol, drugs, self-harm, suicide, attempted suicide at least. It really deals with those themes, but it uses them because they are part of the story. It doesn't explore them deeply. Anorexia is also in there in the mix. Trying to slim is also in there, but it doesn't explore them from a psychological point of view, but on the surface, because they happen. They are plot points. So one could say, okay, this is maybe overdoing it, but it makes sense in the story. So if you could imagine reading a book about demonic possession that's also set in the 80s. The 80s do kind of play a role every so often, especially in the beginning of the book. You really get the 80s flavor. You also get some song titles as chapter headings. For example, Fast Car by Tracy Chapman is one of them, and so on and so forth. Then this book is for you. It reads really fast. They call it, this book packs all the magic of a summer horror flick. And I think it does, in a way. But on the last 1.5 pages, it leaves the territory of summer horror flick and cuts deep. And if you believe that some of the things that I've been telling you are a little bit trivial, yes, they are in the book as well, but the last 1.5 pages kind of wiped any triviality that this book may have from my mind, because they were super powerful. So this is a recommendation. I would give it probably 3 stars if I were to rate it. And I wish you all a happy new year. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.